Yo, what's going on, guys? I'm Sam. Welcome back to another video. We have some fresh iOS 13 rumors to talk about today. Something big is said to finally be happening with the ever-present volume indicator, and Bloomberg shares a new report talking about Apple's extended plans this year and next for true cross-platform apps. And the Mac Pro could be previewed at WWDC 2019 as well. Some pretty exciting stuff as always, so if you're excited for that, drop a like down below. And of course, hit subscribe. I always appreciate that. Let's go ahead and jump into these new reports. So you guys know the volume indicator. This has been really a big joke in the iOS community for some time, just because every time you go to adjust the volume, no matter where you are, you could be in the settings app, you could be in Twitter, it always shows up directly in the middle of your screen, which doesn't make sense if you want to change the volume while still looking at what you were looking at before. Like, I think multitasking while, reading something and changing the volume is definitely something that people do. I do it all the time. So a new report, or I should say a new tweet rather, from somebody who writes over at XDA, which is a Android developer site. The tweet is by somebody named Max Weinbach, and they say, just got some amazing news. In iOS 13, the volume heads-up display, that's the little box, is gone. Apple is finally fixing their software. It is also supposed to be groundbreaking, but whatever. So I'm hoping that they do something like this, where they put it in either the top left or top right ear or portion of something like an iPhone 10 or 10s. That was what we designed or came up with in our concept last year, just because it's so unobtrusive. But anything over what we have now that doesn't fill the entire screen, but it feels like it fills the entire screen. I think that's all that matters. Basically, just anything different from this box in the middle of the screen would be appreciated. This is, again, something we've been looking forward to for years, and for some reason, 2019 was the year that Apple just finally said, oh yeah, we'll do dark mode, because the Bloomberg report that we'll talk about in a second also reaffirms that dark mode is definitely coming for easier nighttime viewing on iPhone and iPad and iOS 13. And they also said, we're doing dark mode, why not just fix every other problem with iOS that people have complained about for years? Seems like a pretty good strategy to me, and I'm very happy to report that Apple is going to be making big changes this year. So dark mode, the volume HUD is going to be fixed. We're looking at a redesigned home screen, mainly on the iPad, but also on the iPhone. Photos app revamp. Like, there's so many good changes coming now that I'm getting a little hyped. And the next report is all about cross-device apps. And that's a concept that I think requires a little bit of context for you to fully understand why and how Apple is doing this. So basically right now, when a developer makes an app, there are a number of different platforms that they can make it for. Mainly iPad, iPhone, and Mac. So iOS and macOS. But designing an app for iOS can be very different than designing an app for macOS. They do have two different user interface styles. They are two very different platforms. And Apple says that they're not going to combine the two truly in any way, shape, or form. And the Bloomberg report says that as well. That the two platforms, while they will share apps in the near future, are still going to be completely and entirely independent. The idea with cross-device apps is that rather than developers having to optimize one app for the iPad, one app for the iPhone, and one app for the Mac, they'll be able to take apps that developers have already made on the iPhone and super easily port them to the Mac with very little code change. And honestly, on the surface, that sounds like a really great idea. The only tricky part here is how that's going to look when it's actually executed. Apple has actually confirmed in the past to us that in 2019, this developer preview would be coming that allows developers to port apps from iOS to the Mac. And according to this report, we get some more details saying that iPad apps will be able to be ported to the Mac in developer preview as early as this year's WWDC in June, which seems like a logical time for Apple to launch it. But iPhone apps will not be able to be ported to the Mac until sometime in 2020. Then following that, in 2021, there's going to be something called single binary, where before 2021, you'll have to submit a different version of the app to the iOS App Store and the Mac App Store. They're still going to be separate, but Bloomberg reports that in 2021, so this is just about 2 years away, which really isn't that far in the grand scheme of things, Apple's going to introduce this thing called single binary, where you submit one version of the application to a combined iOS and macOS app store. And there, people will be able to download any iOS app that supports single or universal binary on any Mac, straight up with nothing else required, which again sounds pretty crazy. In practice, it's a good idea. You get all the apps that you have on your iPad on your Mac, and you can use them easily. But when it actually comes to using them, I've already noticed it on things like News and the Music Voice Memos app, I should say, and there was one other that Apple ported as well. they work, again, like they're functional, but the user experience feels a little bit degraded to me. These apps were clearly made to be touched. They were made for the iPad, and that's exactly what Apple ported to the Mac, was just these iPad apps. And I think in the long term, that could definitely hurt the appeal of using macOS. It's like, why would I even use macOS if I can just do this on iOS already? And it's been ported over with pretty much no thought involved, because user experience is important. I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from using an Apple product is generally the user experience, whether you're on iOS or macOS, is pretty locked down. And cross-device apps, while they will be cool and they'll be functional, again, in the long term, I don't know if that's going to make it better or worse for users in the end. I think short term, people are going to be really happy and they're going to love it. But I see this future in 4, 5, 10 years down the road where we just are using iOS apps on the Mac. And that's not the best possible experience you could have. I think the best possible experience you could have is a really well-designed Mac app on the Mac and a really well-designed iOS app on iOS. And I wish there was some way Apple could merge the two without sacrificing the quality of the experience. As always, I gotta hear your thoughts about this down below. Are you excited for apps to come from your iPhone or iPad to your MacBook or your iMac Pro or your Mac Pro? And actually, speaking of the Mac, at the very end of this article, we get a little tidbit of information. These are always my favorite because they just are enough to get us excited for what's to come. But they mention that as early as this year's WWDC, Apple is mulling. They're thinking about the idea of debuting the Mac Pro there or previewing it for developers. Apple has teased this Mac Pro probably more than any product in their history. They keep, talking about it here and there. We're working on this modular computer for developers that is said to be customizable. Hopefully you'll be able to change out the processor. That would be amazing. Hopefully you'll be able to change out the RAM. That's a must for me. It's said to be the most modular Mac ever created. And to what extent Apple takes that concept, we don't know. They'll probably be pretty conservative with it at first because generally Apple and customization don't exactly go together. I was really proud of that. Look, they lined up and see, I'm doing it now and they're clashing, but I really did that smooth. I think I have a future in this. And actually, it's not unprecedented for Apple to unveil the Mac Pro at WWDC. While we generally see WWDC as a software event, back in 2017, they released new hardware, and actually back in 2012 or 2013, I think it was 2013 at WWDC, that's when they previewed the all-new Mac Pro that we've had for the past 6-ish years. So Apple has unveiled a Mac Pro at the Worldwide Developers Conference before. Maybe as part of the keynote on June 3rd, we're going to see the Mac Pro there as well. It's definitely plausible, and the report indicates that Apple's at least thinking about it. All right, guys, so those are the latest iOS 13 rumors. As always, I want to hear your thoughts about everything. Is this going to work? Is it going to be a giant failure? Let me know down below in the comments section. If you learned something new, drop a like, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on anything else. But for now, I've been Sam. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always, and I will catch you all in my next video.